You know, I hear a lot of people talking about how great the Bladesinger is in 5e.
Yeah, I think we need to investigate that and see if it's lives up to the hype.
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds.
And don't worry, we're not going to be singing in this one. All right, so first off, let's talk about the concept of, the Gish, the blade wielding, spell slinging, warrior is such an evocative and badass image, but we need to strip out the mechanics away from the fun concepts to really figure out if, the concept of the Bladesinger and the application of the Bladesinger really hold up.
It's always a cool concept. It's fun to play. I mean, I mained a Gish in our first 5e campaign from level 1 to level 20. And, granted, there are several cool tricks that character could do. But at the end of the day, my biggest takeaway from the experience was, I never did as much damage fighting in combat as the character that had more fighter levels in the group. Or even really the rogue, to be honest with you, with their sneak attack.
And you never did as much damage as the straight up full spellcasters that were in the group.
Yeah, yeah.
So you had this caveat of, hey, my trick is I'm really hard to hit, and the character was fun to play, but there was always that sliding scale of, I'm stuck in the middle.
Yeah, I'm always hard to hit, which is super useful until you do get hit, and it's a crit usually because you are hard to hit. And, most of my hit points are wizard hit points. Even though I had a high constitution. I get, by the end of the game, the rogue with the amulet of health had higher hit points than I did, right? So, in theory, they could take a punch better than my character could. So these are some of the things that we've kind of observed through play, and not so much just theorycraft. Like I said, I could do cool tricks like action surge and cast 2 spells in the same round, to devastating effect. But then that's like a one and done thing, in a combat. And if you have multiple combats in a day, or before you can get the rest, you're not going to be doing that.
So that definitely alters and changes, how the gameplay is affected by your class choices, and we're kind of gonna go into that and really figure out, what are the nuts and bolts of this.
Absolutely. But before we do, we should take a moment to pay some bills and thank our sponsor, Dungeon Fog. Dungeon Fog allows us to make these awesome maps that are super intuitive, easy to use. They look gorgeous. They look beautiful. I love using the software because it makes me feel like I'm drawing on craft paper like I'm a kid again, except for my maps never look so good. You can even go sign up for a free account, test it out, play with it, see if you like it or not before you even decide to spend any money. But, also one of the things that we do over on our Patreons, for our patrons, is every month, we throw up at least one map that we've made using Dungeon Fog, just as something we use in our games. It's just something extra. But we also do a bunch of other stuff over on Patreon.
As well as getting access to the map, you're going to get access to things like subclasses, magic items, print and play cards. Every month we're dropping new rewards that players and DMs alike can use for 5th edition D&D.
Probably those links down in the description. Check them out. So what is it? What do we always hear when someone's like, "But my Bladesinger"?
We're always hearing that the Bladesingers, do a ton of damage in combat, and that they're really hard to hit.
And they're super tanky. Yeah.
Yeah. So these damage dealing tanky wizards, it just kind of doesn't seem to fit with what you see mechanically within the class.
Yeah. I mean, there might be instances or whatever, but we'll kind of circle back to that. First, I think we kind of have to examine what is it that the Bladesinger gets, so we can determine if, is your Bladesinger really that tanky? And are they really doing that much damage?
All right, so the Bladesinger is going to get a class ability at 2nd level when you take the tradition, and one of the first thing you get is access to light armor.
Light armor, a single melee weapon that you can use one-handed, and also the perform skill. I'm actually most impressed with the perform skill out of all those things because Literally, there is a bunch of different races that you can take to get armor and weapon proficiencies.
You know, the lizard folk is going to give you a natural armor. Dwarf is going to give you, depending upon which version you go, access to armor and weapons. So, like, you know, right off the bat.
Hobgoblin, Githyanki, Turtle has a natural armor that's the best in the game. So, you know, all of those things are going to actually be better than that second level ability you get.
Absolutely.
Quick addendum too, like also that one melee weapon you're going to take proficiency with, more than likely it's going to be a short sword, scimitar, or rapier. I think they're mostly going to be rapiers, to be honest with you. Now, it doesn't have to be. It could be any plethora of weapons. But the problem is, you're a wizard wearing light armor, so you probably want a high dexterity. We already need a high intelligence.
Because we're a wizard.
We should have a decent con because we're whacking things with a weapon.
So we want a high intelligence, we want a high constitution, and we want a high dex because we can't wear the higher armor. So that's 3 stats that we're already requiring to be a good Bladesinger. So if you aren't going to fight with a weapon that uses dex, that means you're going to need strength on top of all of this as well, which that, you know, a 4-stat build I've tried, they're really hard to do, and you don't really maximize anything.
Yeah, you're not gonna get to those 20s. Forget about taking feats. You know, all of that is going to kind of factor in. So like, it's almost like that part of your second level tradition is a ribbon ability, in my opinion, compared to like most of the other wizards are going to be getting, being able to put spells in their spell book for cheaper, and you know, which I mean, depending on the campaign, that might not matter. If like your characters are always have tons of gold, then like, you know, getting spells in your spell book isn't
Not
a big
really a
deal.
problem.
But I've played in plenty of campaigns where my characters are always strapped for gold, so like I'm like, oh man, I would really like to put this in my book, but I don't have any gold. So when you can scrimp and save and cut some corners, it really does help. Or you can look at something like the War Wizard, who doesn't get that, but instead they get to add their intelligence to their initiative.
You know, when you look at, you know, especially with the low levels of the game where money, you know, the resource of gold pieces are low, warriors are tending to buy better armor, and wizards are buying, you know, more spells, or, you know, finding things and taking the ink to put things in their spell book. So you've got this balance. Well, depending upon what you are doing to try and get better armor class, you might be having to figure out, well, what am I doing with my money? Am I trying to buy better armor, or am I trying to put spells in my spell book? The Gish characters struggle because they want to do both.
Well, let's jump into the other second level ability. You get Blade Song, right? And what that does is that allows you, for as a bonus action, you can activate your Blade Song, and it's going to give you several benefits. One of them being that you're going to get to add your intelligence modifier to your armor class. That's actually pretty sweet. That's not bad at all. You're going to get advantage on dexterity acrobatics checks,
which you might not be proficient with, but hey, you know, advantage always helps.
Yeah, you may not be proficient with it, because unless you got it from either your race, don't think any races give you acrobatics, maybe there might be one, or you had to get it from your background, so it's possible. And also you get a bonus equal to your intelligence modifier to your concentration, constitution saving throw. Super useful, especially if you're a warcaster, which would kind of pair pretty nicely with blade singing and blade song. Then you have advantage and that extra benefit. You're going to be really good at concentrating on spells, but you're going to need to be, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So, also there's one other benefit I almost forgot about, is your speed increases by 10 feet.
Yeah. So this is going to allow you to be more mobile on the battlefield. It's going to allow you to be harder to hit. You're going to be able to concentrate on those spells better because you're adding 2 stats, you know, super helpful, you know, and we all know that those concentration spells, whether you're talking about, you know, haste, enlarge, shadow blade, all of these are going to be advantageous for a blade singer to be, you know, using.
So far I actually really like the blade song. But I like it from over there, not over here where the guy's trying to whack me with stuff, right? Because you're going to need that higher armor class. And at first level, you could start with, I think you could get like a 17 armor class, maybe an 18. If you have studded leather, I think gives you +2. And then we could have a intelligence modifier giving us a +3 and our dex modifier giving us a +3. But that also means we probably only have a +1 or +2 to our con modifier. So we're a wizard, 6 hit points at first level, +2 is 8. And then, 4, 12, we're at 14 hit points at second level with our 17 armor class or 18 armor class.
And we're
Well,
squishy.
yeah, we're kind of squishy. Well, the first level fighter literally starts off with more hit points than we have at second level, and their armor class is the same. If they're using a shield, if they're using a protective style, it could maybe even be a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of builds where we can make a first level character that is supremely, more hit points and more armor class than what this has. And as a wizard, you're going in and you're gonna be squishy.
Yeah, so you're gonna need those bonuses to concentration saves because you're gonna probably be making them a bit more often early on. I mean, you can use things like shield and stuff like that to kind of up your armor class and make you tankier, but still, like a natural 20 still hits you. And at the lower levels, like that could just take you out.
That can put you down.
It could put you down or just straight out kill you because you don't have the hit points to back up what you're doing in combat. Now, I mean, granted, crits low level, dangerous to everybody. But I feel like it's a little bit worse when you're the squishy wizard who by all rights should probably be in the back. And also like the second level abilities that you would have got from another wizard tradition would have been things that make you better at casting spells. For instance, tactical wit increases your initiative so you can go first, but then the other ability, arcane deflection, that the war wizard gives you is like a mini shield. You expend your reaction +2 to your armor class or a +4 to a saving throw, and with the caveat of you can't cast any spells other than cantrips until the following round.
Right.
But it allows you to conserve spell slots too. So
And resource management is a part of this, and you always have to make those tough choices. So where do we go from here?
6th level, we get extra attack. And also one of the things I think that got changed from the original Bladesinger to this edition or to this version is one of those extra attacks can be used as a cantrip instead, which is great because most of the time a wizard can do way more damage with a cantrip than they can by hitting something with a weapon.
So this is a nice trade off, and I know that it was something that for yourself when you play that Gish character, that was something that the Eldritch Knight gets at 7th level that you were really looking forward to, and it was really like a crux moment of do I go to 6 levels in fighter and do the 14 levels of wizard, or do you do 7 in fighter and 13 in wizard, because that would make a difference in your overall spellcasting ability. So like that's a clutch moment. So getting access to it as a Bladesinger earlier than the Eldritch Knight definitely looks like a fun ability, and definitely allows you to up the damage that you're doing.
But all in all, I don't think it makes you particularly better, right, than other wizards. And again, like a lot of your damage could probably come from just the ability to cast a cantrip. 6th level, we're getting 2 dice instead of 1. And sometimes we can find ways to add our modifiers to that with our cantrips, depending on what kind of a mix we're going with. But for the Bladesinger, I think probably not. Like you're probably your 6th level, you're gonna fight with your Shadow Blade or your Rapier, and then maybe get that cantrip off as well. Now that's also a nice area where you can like bump up your damage as well. But again, at that point, like the Shadow Blade probably does more of the cantrip, so it's kind of a wash. It's more of like a cool flavor thing.
There are times that it's going to be useful, and you might not be playing with Shadow Blade, you might be using something else, and if you're not, that definitely is going to lower the straight up damage threshold that you're doing. Shadow Blade is definitely the direction that we say to go if you're doing the Bladesinger.
But that being said, right, what are other wizards getting at these levels, right? They're getting things that is going to either key or trigger off of their spellcasting or make their spellcasting better, which you're already good at, right? You're already good at casting spells. And what what you're getting as a Bladesinger is things that make you better at fighting in combat, which you, as a wizard, you're not good at. I always feel like things that mitigate weaknesses are inferior to things that
That bolster your
compound
abilities.
and bolster things you're already good at.
Yeah, and looking at the the core 8 schools that are in the player's handbook, everything that they get builds on top of what it is that that class already does. And as we climb through the levels at 10 and 14th level, looking at these subclasses, they all say, oh well, this is what you do, this is where we see this direction for what this wizard typically does. We're going to build and improve upon them.
I mean, even like the evocation, wizard at 6th level, they're just gonna fireball, right? You can go over there and whack something with your sword twice, and maybe you can do all right damage. But fireball is 8 die 6, and it's going to be against a lot of creatures. I think like in a 20-foot radius, what is that, like 50 plus?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was packed, are you ever going to get that? No. Are some of them going to make their saving throws? Yes. But overall, that is a lot more damage that you can do than running over there and whacking them with your sword.
Area effect damage is usually going to trump whatever else a martial character is going to do.
Under the right circumstances.
Under the right circumstances. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you might remember Nate the Nerdarchy, good friend of ours. And back in the day, Nate was all about, the wizard and spells, and I was all about the martial characters, and, there would be numerous discussions, and it was always, especially back in 2nd edition, it was always low levels, the martial characters would win out, and at high levels, like, they are not even anywhere close to the same playing field. Spellcasters would win hands down. It's just how the dynamic of the game has changed. Or how the dynamic of the game was built. Now things are a little bit closer to even, but in damage output, it's still no real competition. Fighters, just can't do as much damage as spellcasters. And when you look at the damage threshold of area effect spells versus swinging a weapon, the Bladesinger just is not going to be able to do enough damage swinging a sword, because their only resource for spending those spell slots is actually pretty darn poor. And that's what they get at 10th level, of being able to sacrifice a spell slot as a reaction when they take damage to get 5 hit points off per level of the spell. While that might be a nice, threshold for cure wounds, just the sheer damage output versus damage mitigation, it's a poor choice in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you're casting 4th or 5th level spells at 10th level. So the amount of damage you can do or damage you could stop through spells is way more than using this reaction.
Well, let's take this up to ridiculous proportions. Would you rather cast Meteor Swarm or sacrifice that spell to be able to knock off 45 hit points of damage?
Yeah, or wish, right? By the time you can actually, give up that slot for amounts of damage that really matter, like the resources that you're giving up to do it, they're not equal. They're not even close. Maybe if it was 10 or 15 points per spell slot level, then, it would feel a little bit better.
I think that that definitely does fit, because I mean if you look at the cleric spell heal, that can restore 70 hit points worth of healing. That kind of does mesh out with that 7th level spell slot. But I mean, we're not here to try and fix Bladesinger. We're here to just kind of discuss the concepts and compare it to the other wizard subclasses and see, really, does it hold up.
Yeah, I mean, the 10th level ability for War Wizards is one of my favorites, and that's just like concentrating on a spell. Great. Have a +2 to your armor class and all your saves. Like, that's nice. That's like wearing 2 items of protection at the same time. And let's face it, if you're a Bladesinger, you're concentrating on a spell all the time. I don't care if it's Blur, Haste, or Shadow Blade, but you're concentrating on something.
Well, I mean, let's look at Conjuration, Wizard. They at 10th level, get the ability where if they're concentrating on a spell, they don't make Constitution saving throws because of damage. They just can't fail.
On a conjuration, like
Yes.
specifically.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. That's what they do. And then their 14th level ability is for every creature you summon, they just start with 30 extra temporary hit points.
Yeah, that is crazy. So like that winds up changing the course of, what that character would make as a choice of what they bring. I would be opting to bring in more things at lower levels just for the sheer amount of hit points that they would be able to absorb. Whereas you compare that versus what the Bladesinger gets at 14th level, they have to wait till that threshold to finally be able to add their intelligence modifier to damage. At this point in time, it's like, yay, now I'm getting +5 to, these abilities where I might get 2 attacks around.
3 with haste.
3 with haste if they're not casting Shadow Blade.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, technically you could get that, but when you compare that to, say, the Conjuration Wizard, I summoned 8 things, that's 240 extra hit points that I've just added into the battlefield just because I'm a Conjuration Wizard. So, like,
I mean, when you mention that too, it's like my mind goes to their familiar. Their familiar has 30 extra hit points, which is equivalent to if you have decided to use a 6th level spell slot to absorb damage compared to a 1st level one. Now, I mean, again, like, it doesn't mean that a Bladesinger isn't fun to play. It doesn't mean, that you're not going to have a good time and you're not going to have these cool moments. But I just feel like the stories that I hear seem like exceptional, and they're like one-off instances. They're not like the average of what's going down. And maybe like the Bladesinger in the party is the only wizard, right? So they're not having, or maybe the only full spellcaster who's doing like phenomenal things while you're whacking it with your sword. Like I said, you can do extra damage and be really hard to hit, but you've got wizard hit points. If you are if you're playing a straight up just Bladesinger, and you say you have a 14 con and maximum hit points at 10th level, it's only 80 hit points, right? Like, at 10th level, the monsters that you're fighting, and they do hit you with a crit, like, that might be half your hit points right there.
Or more, depending.
Yeah, or more. And that's saying maxed out hit points.
Yep.
And I've definitely had that happen in games where that is. And again, you might have some cool tricks, but on average, it's not the same. Like when you start breaking it down to what you could do in combat at 14th level, right? 5th level spell, Cone of Cold. I think you can hit 70 plus targets with that. Now, granted, that's like optimal and isn't going to happen all the time. So at 14th level, when the Bladesinger is kind of done and is fully online, and you're able to add your intelligence modifier plus your dex or your strength, whichever weapon you're using, and it's probably like a +10 to hit or +10 to damage plus the weapon. We kind of figured that out, that it's going to be probably a Shadow Blade. You're probably going to average like maybe 60 to 90 points of damage around if you're hasting.
Right.
Granted, there's other problems with hasting because you can't do other things. Or no, the average damage will actually go down because you won't be able to Shadow Blade. But we're looking at like if you Shadow Blade, you max that out as a 5th level slot, you're going to attack twice. That's 60. I mean, if someone else hasted you, then you could do like 90 points of damage. But like a 4th level spell, Ice Storm, you could probably hit like 50 plus creatures with an average of 20 points of damage, right? If they don't make their saving throw, at 10 if they do. But still, that's like 500 points of damage. Are you ever going to have those optimal situation? No. But it's not super unrealistic to have half of that. It's not super unrealistic for your dungeon master to be like, there's an army of enemies out there fighting your army of allies, right?
And they're perfectly positioned to be able to fit your Ice Storm.
Well, an army would be. They're like files and ranks, right? So you, boom, devastate the army. Like, your Bladesinger is never going to do that unless they do wizard things, not Bladesinger things, right?
That Cone of Cold, you can hit, 70 plus creatures, average damage of 32. That's a lot of damage. Cone of Cold, when you see the template on that thing, it just gets ridiculous.
And then there's Chain Lightning. I think you can hit like up to 4 different creatures with chain lightning, and you're talking like 40 points of damage on average. You know, it could be better, it could be worse.
So when you start looking at these AoEs, like they're just not, measuring up. When we look at, again, going back to, the evocation wizard being able to be like, oh, well, I'm going to drop this AoE and not have to hit any of my allies because I'm that good. That makes these wizards kind of stand out, and that goes back to what I said about how everything that the core 8 subclasses make those wizards better at those things. Whereas like I feel like while yes, the Bladesinger does get better at blade singing, like you can only sing so often, and when you're not singing, you're losing a lot of ability. So if you're having a lot of combats, the Bladesinger ability does tend to drop off even further. So it gets touchy.
Yeah, well, I mean, eventually you can do it up to 6 times per long rest. I don't think you're gonna run out of blade singing unless your group does a lot of combats. But the thing is, like you said, like everything from the Bladesinger just makes you better at fighting, which is what the wizard's already not good at, where everything from most of the other subclasses makes you better at using your spells, gives you utility things. And the other part of it, for being a Bladesinger, you don't get anything interesting outside of combat, right? It is all combat abilities. It's all about that pillar of the game.
Except for performance.
Except for performance. I feel like there's just a lot of better ways to get that skill than going Bladesinger.
So, we mentioned that they're tanky. We mentioned that they do a lot of damage. And, we can already create tankier characters using other options, using other builds. And as far as the damage goes, like, they're not out damaging other wizards. So I don't know what your experience was, at the table of seeing a Bladesinger either in your games as a fellow player or as a dungeon master. But when Dave and I were at, D&D in a castle, I had a Bladesinger in my game. The game went from level 1 to 17 over the course of 6 sessions, kind of an accelerated storyline. And because of some very nice magic items, the character, while he wasn't dealing a ton of damage in combat, he managed to get to like a 22 armor class, which that in and of itself I thought was pretty darn impressive for a wizard. But I didn't feel like at 17th level that was outside the realm of like, oh my god, what am I going to do with a 22 AC?
Yeah, I mean, my Gish maxed out at a 33. Like, using shield and all the things. Like, so that character could probably 27 with shield. And also, we see, at a lower level game where it's actually like a cleric, fighter, maybe something else mix in there that does something similar, but they can get up to a 27 armor class, 28 armor class, so getting the high armor class isn't that hard. And again, the biggest problem with the super high armor class is the only time you get hit, they seem to be crits, like in my experience, and then you're a wizard, so you don't have the hit points to back up, that hit, so it hurts that much more. Where if you build a super tanky character using other classes, martial classes, well, when they do get hit, it's a crit, but it's okay because they have 200 hit points.
So, it does come down to this crux. It does come down to it. And, this video is not to try and decentivize you from playing a Bladesinger. We just are, looking to try and dispel some of the myth about how glorious and fantastic and overpowered they are. There's other ways to do all of the things that they're doing, and potentially better ways. Play whatever character that you're looking to play, do all of the fun things that you want to do, and if thematically you're in love with the Bladesinger, by all means, we don't hate it. We're not against it. We're just trying to dispel that myth.
Yeah, mechanics and optimization are not the same as fun, right? And you can do both or either or, but whatever you enjoy at the table. Like a lot of times we'll bash something in the game, but what you'll find in our own games is we actually play those because we think they're fun, we think they're thematic, and we think they're interesting. But honestly, I would love to hear your thoughts and your experiences with the Bladesinger. Tell us all the ways we're wrong down in the comments below. Share it with the Nerdarchy community so they can build the most badass Bladesingers ever.
While you're down there, don't forget to do all those things that, make the internets happy. Like, share, subscribe, even go ahead and click on that notification bell.
Quick reminder, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, new Nerdarchy videos. Come on back. But you can't wait till then. Here's another take on a wizard. Check out the Muscle Wizard. You can find the card up here.
So until next time, stay nerdy.